Hey everyone, it is Nick with the Backlog, and with Cyberpunk 2077 fast approaching with the release date, and Keanu Reeves,
I'm Keanu Reeves.
I figure it's time for an obligatory list video. But first, some basic YouTube bullcrap out of the way, like, comment, subscribe, yada yada yada. If you are subscribed, hit that notification button because apparently YouTube is doing this weird thing now where even if you are subscribed to someone, you still won't get notifications on their videos. So hit that notification button if you're subscribed. If you're not, go ahead and subscribe, like, comment what your favorite Cyberpunk thing is, why you're excited about Cyberpunk 2077, some other good recommendations that aren't on this video, etc, etc. A lot of stuff in this video will probably be in other obligatory list videos for Cyberpunk 2077. Timestamps will be in the description below, so if you want to check those out to skip to your favorite one or just to see what's generally listed here and on this video, go ahead and do that. I'm going to be listing off a couple of things. I'm going to start with movies and TV that you should watch. I'm going to start next with books you should read, music you should listen to, and then finally games you should play. So in no particular order, this is Cyberpunk preparing for 2077. First movie is Blade Runner, and of course it's going to be on this list. It kicked off the cyberpunk genre in the 80s, according to some people, I guess. Blade Runner is a classic. It's a good film and it's a great representation of the cyberpunk genre, but its tropes and themes do get a little bit tiring after a while. Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer give some amazing performances. With its excellent music by Vangelis, it set the basic soundtrack for something or anything cyberpunk. Visually, it's a stunner, and you can't not see its influence in anything cyberpunk related at all nowadays, so give Blade Runner a watch. It is a bit of a slow burn movie. Me and my friend Tamika have tried to watch it together multiple times and she keeps falling asleep, but pace yourself through it and you'll enjoy the film. I also recommend watching the final cut of Blade Runner, as there's many different versions. Just watch the final cut. It's the intended version, and then you can have that argument whether Deckard is a robot or not.
When Harrison's on his piano, looking at all the photographs and wondering who these people are and what they're after, he's drinking, he's a bit drunk there. And as he drinks, you go off into the unicorn. So it's a reverie. And that was the only reference right there to this abstract image, which is a unicorn. Because at the end of it, he comes out of his thought process. And that never occurs again till the end of the movie. Because when he comes in that apartment, he thinks that he's gone in and killed her, because they know where she is. And when they come out, there it is. Looks like a unicorn.
And it means?
He's a replicant.
Sorry, I am going to say skip over the sequel 2049. Although it has the same visual style and slow burn pace of the original Blade Runner, it's just not, I didn't like it. So we can argue about that later, I guess, but I didn't like it. Because Keanu Reeves is in Cyberpunk 2077 now as Johnny Silverhand, it's time to watch some Keanu Reeves movies. But I'm actually not going to suggest The Matrix. I mean, you can watch The Matrix again, I guess, if you haven't seen it already or in a long time. They're all on Netflix right now as of this recording, so watch that trilogy, I suppose. But I'm actually going to recommend A Scanner Darkly. Released in 2004, Keanu Reeves plays an undercover agent sent to spy on some friends of his who may have connections to a drug ring he's searching out. The film itself plays on paranoia, the drug scare of the 60s and 70s, and just general cyberpunk themes of government totalitarianism and dystopianism. It has a very unique visual style. Everything was filmed normally and then drawn over. It actually has a lot of visual similarities to this one Daniel Craig cyberpunk film, Renaissance. You can check that one out as well. Another Keanu Reeves film is Johnny Mnemonic. Of course, it's gonna be on this list. It's 90s, it's cheesy, it's cyberpunk up the wazoo, and it has one of the best hacking scenes in all of film history. Fight me. The final two are going to be Strange Days and Cypher. Strange Days sees Lenny, a now ex-cop turned street man, peddling virtual reality like street drugs almost, stumble across a conspiracy at the dawning of Y2K, when technology and everything would destroy us and we'd all die. Angela Bassett and Ralph Fiennes give some of their best performances, I think, in their entire film catalog. Definitely worth checking out. Cypher sees a mild-mannered Joe trudged into corporate conspiracies where one corporation is fighting another and he has to spy on one or turn tail and spy on the other. It's a great thriller film. It really makes you question like what reality is. I won't spoil anything for you, but just give Cypher a watch. Now, I know there's plenty of other movies that I missed on this list, like the classics, RoboCop, Tron, Total Recall, Adjustment Bureau, Terminator. If you haven't seen any of those, you should, especially if you're excited for 2077. Next up is television. Now, I only really have a few television programs that you should watch, as there's only really a few to recommend. I want to get this out of the way. Skip Altered Carbon. You can watch it if you want, but I recommend skipping it. Don't read the book either. Fuck that book. Instead, I'm going to recommend Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot sees Elliot, a young hacker who joins the hacktivist group F Society to take down the evil corporation E-Corp. There's paranoia, there's drug use, there's computers, there's hacking. It's everything a cyberpunk show should have. It has all the tropes there. The only thing that's missing, I guess, would be the Blade Runner future aesthetic with the flying cars and it's raining all the time. And it's really a refreshing take on the cyberpunk genre. It's almost a cyberpunk origin story, I've heard people call it. As the show progresses, it gets more and more towards a cyberpunk future, and it's set in our present modern day. Makes you think. Finally, the last TV show that I actually have to recommend is Max Headroom. After the heaviness of Mr. Robot, or Altered Carbon, I guess, if you want to watch it, you need something funny and still kind of dark, which is Max Headroom. The show follows Edison Carter, an investigatory journalist trying to stop the oligarchy of television network that rule our dystopian future. TV has advanced so far into the future that it can track and monitor our movements. It's only 14 episodes long, they're pretty quick, and it's a fun cyberpunk break from all the dark stuff. Alright, let's move on to books. Now, everyone says, oh, read William Gibson, read Neuromancer, read the Sprawl trilogy. But I'm actually going to say skip it and just honestly read a bunch of Philip K. Dick stuff. Philip K. Dick is the guy who wrote Total Recall, the guy who wrote Minority Report, the guy who wrote Blade Runner. The book is originally called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the guy who wrote Adjustment Bureau. His fingerprint is everywhere in Hollywood, and he's basically defined the cyberpunk genre by creating it in the first place. Sorry, Gibson fans, Gibson didn't create cyberpunk, he just coined the term. Philip K. Dick is the father of the cyberpunk genre. Without Philip K. Dick, there would be no William Gibson, or at least cyberpunk would have come out in the 80s, but instead it was created in the 1960s, it just didn't have a proper name yet. Next up is William S. Burroughs' The Nova Trilogy. He's the guy who wrote Naked Lunch. For those of you who don't know Naked Lunch, it's one of those controversial books that you might have been forced to read in high school or whatever as a project, kind of like Fahrenheit 451. You should also read Fahrenheit 451. The Nova Trilogy is cyberpunk without its name genre yet. Set in a dystopic future, a detective has to hunt down a bunch of Martians or whatever that change bodies through sex, I think. It's called the Cut Up Trilogy or the Nova Trilogy. Its writing is very different, is what I'm gonna say. It's a bit tough to get through. All it literally is sex and violence throughout most of it, with interchanges of the world building and stuff going on. It's interesting. It's a really interesting read, but it's just a bit makes me squeamish almost. If you don't read any of William S. Burroughs' books, then you should at least read his essays. His essays are some of the best cyberpunk fiction, quote unquote, that better than anything Gibson has probably ever written. And those are just essays. He's also a visual artist. Check out anything William S. Burroughs has visualized for music videos or anything like that. It's mind-blowing, and without his visual style, I don't think you'd have half of cyberpunk. Kind of like how Blade Runner defined cyberpunk for movies and general aesthetic, Burroughs defined cyberpunk with the violence of the augmentations. He has a really visceral visual style. Say that 5 times fast. Without a doubt, check out some of Burroughs' work. Onto the music side. 1. Gunship. They're 80s, they're synth, they even define themselves as cyberpunk. 2. Motorhead or any punk from the 1970s like Sex Pistols or Misfits, because half of cyberpunk is punk. Also any like 60s or 70s like early synth wave, definitely check that out as well. Finally, games. Some of these games I've talked about on my own channel. You can check out reviews for them there or impressions. Uplink, Ruiner, Black Future 88, but of course the very first one, of course it's going to be on this list, System Shock. System Shock is getting a remake by Night Dive Studios, and with System Shock 3 on the horizon, time to check out System Shock 1 and System Shock 2. If you want to wait for the remake, you can, but I recommend picking up the System Shock Enhanced Edition from GOG to support CD Projekt Red, because GOG is run by CD Projekt Red. Next up is Observer, again, another one that you probably figured would be on this list. It's dark, it's Blade Runner all the way, it's got fucking Rutger Hauer in it.
Is unaffected by the Observer.
Attention citizens, curfew is now in effect in all Class C districts. Remain in your apartments and enjoy your chosen holographic content. Thank you for your cooperation.
It's a really fat line.
It's a great detective immersive sim that, even though Cyberpunk 2077 is going for an RPG action genre, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some horrific moments in there that scare you a little bit, and you can't go wrong with Observer. Void Bastards is another one you guys should check out. It's from some of the developers of System Shock 2 and BioShock. It's not so much scary as System Shock is, it's more along the lines of comedy, but that atmosphere is still there. And although it's more like hard sci-fi, cartoony, comic bookish, it's from the same guys who made System Shock 2, so support, man, support. I mentioned Uplink, and I did a little review for Uplink, but I never got around to Hacknet, so now I'm going to get around to Hacknet. Hacknet is another one of those games you should check out if you're into Cyberpunk 2077 and you're looking at the Netrunner ability. Now, the Netrunners in Cyberpunk 2077 are going to operate more along the lines of the Matrix. You jack into a virtual construct of the world, but for more traditional hacking and just that paranoid government feeling of breaking into someone's computer, Hacknet. It also uses code and real computer terminology and everything for Hacknet. It teaches you as well as playing a video game. There's even a learning mode. Check out Hacknet. I can't have Blade Runner on the movie list without having the Blade Runner Westwood Studios game on the list. There's a reason it's still cited as one of the best movie adaptations ever, as one of the best games ever made. It takes the Blade Runner movie, runs parallel along with it, and gets that essence of the movie down to a T, straight to the music. It runs flawlessly on modern day systems. It even runs perfectly for me on Windows 10. Fucking amazing. Blade Runner, the game. And finally, for games, we have Deus Ex, Human Revolution, and Mankind Divided. Cyberpunk 2077 is basically Deus Ex and GTA had a baby. If you were in a pitch meeting, that would be the pitch for it. It has a breathtaking visual atmosphere, it's gorgeous to look at, the gameplay is solid, the stealth is solid, the augmentations are solid, everything for Mankind Divided and Human Revolution just works. Now, why I didn't say the original Deus Exes is because I know those are a bit tough to go back to, especially with the graphics, and a lot of us have just been turned off to graphics are ugly, I'm not gonna play. So just do yourselves a favor, stick with Human Revolution and Mankind Divided. Not to mention they're technically prequels, so you don't have to play the original Deus Ex games. But if your need to play 2077 is so great, just play Deus Ex. It's the closest thing we're gonna get to 2077 right now anyway, until it's actually officially released. That's all I really have for this video. I know there's a bunch of other games and books and movies and TV and stuff that I skipped over or missed on. If you have other recommendations, list them in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe, blah, 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 YouTube. Until next time, I'm Nick, and this is The Backlog.